Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on page 462, talking about the domain name system and the task you have to do there. Okay, so let's say that you're Joe's Plumbing, and is it okay for there to be another Joe's Plumbing someplace else in the state? You know, you're in Killeen, Texas, and you have Joe's Plumbing. Can there be a Joe's Plumbing in Houston? Yeah, nobody's going to care. Could there be a Jones Plumbing in Oklahoma City? Yeah, okay. Could there be a Jones Plumbing in Canada? Sure, okay. But how many joesplumbing.coms are there in the entire world? One. So this is very important. You need to be picking your domain name before you start, because a lot of the good names are already taken. So yeah, you need to be picking your name really, really, really early in the process. You know, I went to this seminar and they were talking about how to create limited liability corporations in the state of Texas, and they said, well, now, you know, once you got your things together, you need to go to register your domain name. And I'm thinking, oh, you guys have got to be kidding. It's the other way around. You need to be getting your domain name first. Okay, so they go through some steps here about how to pick a name. All right, so does it describe your business? I mean, you don't just say unicorns.com and then it's a plumbing supply place. What? I mean, you know, the name of your domains kind of should say something about plumbing parts, okay? Kind of makes sense. It should be brief. People don't like to type long names. Okay. You should be able to misspell it. Don't have a name that's commonly misspelled. You know, I before E except after C kind of a thing. Don't have easily misspellable names. Avoid hyphens. I don't particularly use that one because my domain name has a hyphen. You don't want to know why my domain name has a hyphen? Because my real name was already taken. I've already told you that. All the good things have already been taken. Avoid trademark kind of names. I mean, you can't say Oreo or, you know, that kind of stuff in there because that's a, you know, trademark name. Okay. So there's not just one domain name kind of thing you could go after. If I went after a top level domain, most of the time it'd be like a .com, but there are others. I mean, there's a .net and there's a .org and an .edu and a .mil and all the rest of it. Sometimes you have to be part of an organization. For example, a mom and pop operation can't get a .mil or a .edu, but they can get a .net if it's somewhat appropriate. Okay, so They talk about the steps you should go through. This is why you're coming up with this. You probably should come up with some keywords that are people who are likely going to be searching by. Okay, for example, you know, plumbing parts. If you expect people to be typing plumbing parts, American Standard plumbing parts, you know, into a browser, then you need to you don't have a list of those words that you expect people to be searching for in order to get to you. Okay. And then they say, verify the availability. Ha 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 ha. No. I tell you what, anyone can go here and go to the who is, and you could type in, this is the easy way to find out. Here's what I did. I wanted to get emmettgray.com. So I just typed in, by the way, the upper and lowercase doesn't matter. So I just typed in this, and to see if I could get that one. And haha, it is available. It wasn't at the time. That is amazing. Haha. And I ended up getting, emmett-gray.com. That's what I ended up getting because my name was already taken. So I had to end up putting a dash in there. Okay. So yes, that's one of the things you need to kind of do first is pick your domain name because you know you don't get your. I mean, if I have to change my name, I don't want to do that before. I mean, I do want to do that before I go in to get my LLC or develop my web page or my business cards or decals that go on the side of the trucks, right? Okay, so this is kind of sort of important. So how do you go about registering a domain name? Well, actually, it's pretty doggone easy. Most people don't go directly to the naming authorities. You could. It costs about $35 a year if you go directly to them and say, I want a domain name, and here's what I want. They'll charge you. Now, most people, if you're hosted, and we're going to talk about hosting here in just a minute. If you go to a hosting site, they just bundle that into the price. For example, you're going to be paying, $50 a year for your hosting your website. Plus, they'll just throw in the domain name registration for free. So how much are you paying for your domain registration? It's kind of hard to tell. Okay. It is perfectly okay for you to go in and hold a name and not use it. Okay? I know a friend of mine that when his kids were born, he registered their domain names as soon as they picked the name for the kid. Okay? So out of the hospital, he's on his phone registering the domain names of the kids that were just born. I'm not kidding. Okay. So yes, this is kind of sort of important. Okay. There's a thing called private registration, which just shows you this kind of information. It does not show you the contact information. So if you were to do a different type of lookup on emmettgray.com, you would see the contact information. You see my name, my phone number, my email address, and my physical address. Lots of people don't like that. So there is an option, it usually costs a little bit more, for what's called a private registration, where they give you only this information and nothing else. You can't actually find who the contact. There may be I'm not sure how it works, but there could probably be some way to contact you, but I don't know exactly how that works. Okay, on page 464, let's start talk about the web hosting options. And there are a lot of choices here. But an awful lot of people, particularly smaller people, do not attempt to host a website on premises. It's just not economically makes sense. The only way you would ever really consider that is you're a big organization with lots of money, or you're just in the business. For example, if I'm Dell Computers, or if I'm, NVIDIA, and, if you're in the computer business, it's perfectly okay, because most likely there's somebody at Dell who knows how to do this, right? There's somebody who's already a graphic designer who works there, and a content manager who works there, and, there's probably somebody there. You just tap them to do your page. But if you're Joe's Boot Repair, no. Okay. So let's go through the list of options here. The one of them is called virtual, or I call it shared. Shared hosting. This is the cheapest of all the options. This basically means that my web page is being hosted on the same server as somebody else's. Okay? So that's the shared part. Most likely this server is not a dedicated piece of hardware. Most likely it's a virtual. You know how VirtualBox and VMware and all these kinds of things allow you to have like a virtual server. So it's a server, but there's probably 24 websites all using the same server. Okay, so this is dirt cheap, and I do mean dirt cheap. It's somewhere in the vicinity of like 25. The lowest, cheapest is about $25 a year. Okay, to host an entire website. Really? Wow, that's cheap. And so, since it's a hosted, a shared server, you have no access to the server whatsoever. For example, you can't say, well, I'm going to go reboot the server. No, because there's 24 other people on the website at the same time, right? You can't. It's not your server. You can't say, well, I want to reboot on Tuesdays, because that means everybody's website would go down. So shared does have some disadvantages. You have no admin control, which, by the way, could be a good thing, because you don't do patches and updates and upgrades, any of that stuff. And it's not really designed for an awful lot of traffic. I mean, because it's shared, there may be, 25 websites on a single server. So clearly they're not designed for an awful lot of traffic. But dirt cheap. The next one talks about dedicated. Dedicated is more like I'm renting a server. And once again, I'm not talking necessarily about a physical server. I'm talking about a virtual machine. But the machine belongs to me now. And I can go in and say, I'm going to reboot that machine on Tuesday because I'm the only customer for that machine. So the dedicated, so my site's running on a dedicated server, well, actually a virtual server. And it's just like me renting a physical box, except there is no physical box. And I can choose, if I want to, I can choose to administer the server. A lot of people don't. It's like, no, I want you to take care of all the patches. I don't want to be responsible for any of that stuff. You take care of the security and the patches, virus definitions and all the rest of that junk, firewall. I don't want to be involved. Or you could say, yeah, I'd like to take over all that. And these are designed for lots of traffic. I mean, clearly it's going to cost more because instead of having a server with 25 websites, it's a server with one website. So it's probably going to cost you about 25 times more. Yeah, okay. And then the last one is the co-located, in-house. The in-house solution is not suitable for everyone. That means you got to purchase the hardware, you got to install it, you got to maintain both the hardware and software. 100% of this belongs to you. You're now going to have emergency backup power. You're going to have, additional lines coming, network connection bandwidth issues. And you alone are responsible for the security of the site. Yeah. If somebody broke in and stole your credit card information, you wouldn't be able to turn to anybody else and say, well, yeah, but, those people over there didn't do their job. No, you're the only people. Okay. So a lot of companies squirm a little because they have to do everything now. Plus, this is pretty expensive. Consider what was the cost for doing the shared/virtual? About $25 a year? I probably could not build a server and pay for the electricity alone. The electricity for a server is probably more than $25 a year. Okay, so yeah, this stuff is crazy. So on page 465, they go into this first category, the shared. So there's lots and lots of choices here. I'm going to show you, here's an example of one of the many. There's lots of these things that do this for a living. So, 100% uptime and SSL. And so here's a $2 a month web and e-commerce website. Now, I will tell you, this just takes you and drops you to the curb. They say, okay, here's your website. Here's some cool authoring tools we can offer you, but that's it. These guys are not going to help you with, we think you need to move this over a little bit, and maybe you should come up with a 2-column design. No. That's not what they do. They're the hosting company. Whatever you put out there, if there's mistakes in what you put out, they're not going to fix them. So let's just click on this and talk about some of the options. So right off the bat, there's two choices. There's a Linux hosting and a Windows hosting. And you might think, wait a minute, what's the difference? Well, it kind of sort of depends on you, what you want. There's a thing called a LAMP stack, and it stands for, Linux and Apache for the web services, and MySQL, and then the P used to stand for PHP, but it kind of stands for practically anything now. And these are technologies that are used for web hosting. So if you're familiar with using the LAMP stack, then maybe you ought to pick a Linux hosting plan. On the other hand, if you're a Windows hosting person, maybe you want, I want Internet Information Server, and I want Microsoft SQL Server, and I want, all these things. I want the Microsoft versions of all these things. Okay, this is a good place to start for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.